It's time for a Combine mailbag. Your questions, Matt Williamson's ear to the ground buzz from Indianapolis. What's going on at the Combine? Have the Bears made their decision with Fields and the number one pick in the draft, and a whole lot more trade activity potentially coming on this episode of Peacock and Williamson?
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Matt, the first thing I got to ask you, I know you're in Indianapolis. I know it's getting into the nitty gritty there. Did you happen to rub elbows with anybody, get any inside information out at the bars downtown in Indianapolis last night?
A little bit of information. I talked to an agent or two about some things I'm going to keep under my hat. That was kind of fun. I texted you. I was at our last stop of the night is real close to the hotel. It's a nice little local water hole here that seems to be frequented by a lot of NFL folks late at night. And your buddy John Lynch was there. That was pretty cool. And Thomas Dimitroff was there. I don't know if it was like a GM meeting or what. I happened to be in the bathroom with Dimitroff, and I'm like, yeah, you're doing a great job over at Sumer Sports. I like the new website. He's like, oh, tell me all about it. So everyone's in good spirits and good time. And then today we did our normal show, and Greg Cosell always is generous enough every year to spend like 20 minutes with us on the air. And Locked On Steelers host Chris Carter, we grabbed him, and I saw your boy Q. I've seen a couple Locked On folks as well, so it's been cool.
Nice. Say hi to all the Locked On folks. Say hi to John Lynch.
Yeah.
Ask him what the plans are at pick 31. I think I have a really good idea, Matt.
I tried to get him on the pod, but couldn't quite convince him.
I couldn't. Yeah, he's a little busy this time of year. Maybe we can squeeze out a segment with the
the GM.
Yeah, any other GMs around the league. Always an open invite for the GMs that listen to the podcast. I'm sure they're out.
We'll make room for you.
Speaking of GMs, I'm pretty sure Ryan Poles, I know exactly what he's going to do. And it's no different than what we expected that they were going to do. And just listen to him talk and speak about Justin Fields, speak about the decision that the Bears franchise has to make with the number one overall pick in the draft. And it just really sounds like Justin Fields is on the trading block, and they just can't say anything about it because they need it to happen, and they want to be able to do right, is what he says, by Justin Fields, and make sure they send him to a place that he wants to be and that it's a good fit for him, and wants to be able to tell him first. And because I think Justin Fields is really well thought of in the Bears organization. And I know the fans like him. I know a lot of the fans kind of want to see him trade down again and just go with Fields and add a bunch of talent. But man, when you hear him talk, it really becomes clear to me that he's trying to tiptoe around it just because he can't say what it is yet, because he doesn't know what it is yet, that Justin Fields is going to be traded and they're going to be drafting Caleb Williams number one.
Sure sounds that way. One thing I have noticed is, I don't have a ton to add to that, but just talking to people, the general consensus is they think the Fields thing will get done soon. And there's more mixed feelings at the top of the draft than I thought. I mean, just evaluators I trust. I mean, like, no one has terrible things to say about May, Williams, or Daniels, but not everyone's convinced Williams is that special. I like him, but people seem to be overreacting. I've got a lot of that feedback.
Not as slam dunk as, say, Trevor Lawrence was a few years ago.
Right. I mean, that was pretty consensus. Yeah. I mean, certainly luck, or, one of these, quote, transcendent, which is a terrible word to use. I mean, he's a little smaller, I don't think he's going to be super physically imposing, can struggle to see the middle of the field at times, as a lot of these smaller guys do. And he makes a share of mistakes as well. And, so people like him, but I haven't seen a lot of gushers about him that I've talked to.
According to reports, Breer, other folks you trust that they have a lot of good contacts. It sounds like people are pretty split, and maybe Jaden Daniels has a lead over Drake May, but some people really love Drake May too. And it sounds like maybe a lot of folks really like Malik Neighbors as well. And actually, that leads into a couple questions that we have here in the hopper. First, let's go to Scott, who asks about Caleb Williams. Do you have any concerns about Caleb Williams going number one? Processing, personality, etc. I know there's been a lot made about that he paints his nails, apparently, or that when he lost a big game last year, he was crying in his mom's arms in the stands, post game. Don't care at all. In fact, I love that he cares about the game, right? And he spoke about it today. He was asked about the Bears. He's like, I would love the opportunity to play with the Bears. And so a lot of the stuff I've heard about Caleb Williams doesn't come from Caleb Williams. It comes from elsewhere. And I don't care if the dude paints his nails. I don't care what kind of wristbands he wears. I learned way back in the 90s not to care because I was always annoyed by Deion Sanders. Like, really? You're going to go with a neck? You're going to go with a wristband around your neck? Like, okay. But it's like, I don't care what your swag is. I don't care if you paint your nails. I care if you're a team player and you're a good football player and the team's going to be able to trust you and it matters to you and you're going to put in the work. And if he checks those boxes, I hope it matters to him. If you shed tears after losing a big game because you wanted to win a college football championship, good. So there's zero problems I have with Caleb Williams personality-wise, and I really don't know where a lot of the stuff comes from.
I 100% agree, but I am recycling a little bit of information that I've gotten talking to people is when the going inevitably gets tough in Chicago, a town that's never had a quarterback, and weather sets in and it's windy and it's nasty and the Bears reporters are all over you and the fans are saying, we should never got rid of Fields. Those days will probably come. And this is stupid, but you can't go running to mommy then. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You got to stand up and be the face of the franchise and the guy in the billboard.
You can, and you can shed some tears, but
sure.
You need to stand up on a podium and speak through those tears and stand up and be the face of the franchise too. Yeah.
100%. So it's not, hey, that he's emotional. It's just, is he going to be able to handle the rigors that are certainly coming of being any, franchise quarterback, let alone the first overall pick, and with the expectations that he's going to be the best quarterback in Bears history, which isn't saying much, but that's crazy.
And luckily it's a low bar too. But it's the transition that a lot of guys have trouble with from going from being a college kid to a grown man. And it happens overnight. And you have, he's already made, I saw a report that he made $10 million the last 2 years at USC with NIL and other endorsements. And so, it's not like he's getting new money for the first time.
Right.
It's not like he's just now becoming famous because, the writing's been on the wall for him being the number one overall pick in the draft for a couple of years now. And so, as long as you have people that you trust that have been around him and your area scouts don't have terrible reports and, he's never done anything wrong that I know of. I'm on board with Caleb Williams and I love the way he plays too. So, and I really do think that's the direction the Bears are going to go here. Speaking of a top quarterback pick, Matt.
Real quick, I want to stop you. One quick thing I just want to throw out there. We have had some interesting conversations with not necessarily scouts, but draft nicks and things of that nature about how the NILs have changed evaluations and all these transfers of almost all the top quarterbacks played several different places. So there's a lot of different mixed reviews. These are a lot of older guys, a lot less juniors. Played at several different spots, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of mixed opinions on that in the scouting world.
There's so many prospects I look at and I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. He started at Maryland, ended up at Chop Robinson, ended up at Penn State. Didn't realize okay, he was a linebacker, now he's a defensive end. So he's a different school, different position. So you can see why statistically maybe he wasn't there. And then a lot of guys have their first really good seasons with their new second college and then third college in some cases after 6 years. And then now you're a draft prospect. So here we are. Next, let's talk about some potential trades happening out there aside from the Justin Fields trade. Zach Wilson allowed to seek trade by the New York Jets, and L'Jarius Sneed officially a tag and maybe a trade coming for him from Kansas City as well. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is, first of all, knowing what's important to you in your life and making that a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched to a licensed therapist. If you don't hit it off, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what matters to you and what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And the next segment of this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins on FanDuel. Bet on all your favorite NBA players, teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. If you don't want to bet on the NBA, you want to bet on the NFL still, even though there's no games. Tons of draft props. Those are always lots of fun. Super Bowl 2024 futures as well. So get involved at FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So taking a look at the mailbag here, Matt, and there was a question regarding one of the topics we just had, but first I want to get to the Zach Wilson stuff. And I don't even know if, so Zach Wilson's 4th year is coming up, which is guaranteed $5.3 million, I think it is, as the number 2 pick in the draft, 5.6, something like that, $5.5 million, somewhere.
Fields is right in that neighborhood, so he's probably right there too.
Yeah.
You know, right. Yeah.
And so any team that trades for him would take on that contract for 1 year and then he'd become a free agent unless you want to pick up his 5th year option, which those decisions have to be made. And clearly nobody's going to pick up Zach Wilson's 5th year option because it'd be pricey as a number 2 pick quarterback.
So you're getting him for a year.
You get him for a year, $5.5 million. Is that value for a team? Are teams, is he going to find that trade as his agent goes and seeks it? Or do you think we're going to, someone going to throw a day 3 pick at him? Or is he end up just going to I feel like he's just going to get cut by the Jets.
If he just gets cut, then, I guess they came to the conclusion he's not a good enough number 2. I guess we saw that last year. He probably won't be a Jet. I can accept that. But they better sign another. Yeah, you can't just have Rodgers and nobody. I think they might get a 6th or 7th. I don't think they'll get a 5th. I think they maybe get a 6th or 7th from a team that has a lot of money, but maybe a very established quarterback and just see where he's at. Maybe a Trey Lance-like deal. Trey
Lance got a 4th, but you got an extra year.
I'd much rather have Lance's situation than Wilson.
And I would take the unknown of Lance over the known bad of Zach Wilson so far in the NFL when you're talking about guys that were drafted back to back. And I would imagine Trey Lance is available for teams as well.
I would think so. Yeah, they're going to give money to Dak soon.
Yeah, and Mac Jones too.
Oh, I think Mac Jones could go for sure.
Yeah.
So I think Jones still has a chance to be a okay starting quarterback. Maybe I'm bonkers. That's his rookie year. Me talking that he was an efficient, good enough to start type of guy. But I'm sitting there thinking, if I'm the Vikings, I might take Wilson and just see if I can reclamation project him, even if I have Cousins. Not even consider him a starter if I don't have Cousins. But just give me somebody with talent and bring him to camp and see what I could do with him.
Mac Jones is interesting because he's a move that you could make.
Yeah.
It probably won't cost a lot and won't get in the way of other moves. Fields is that as well. And you look at a team like everyone always talks about the Steelers and the Falcons with them because those two teams make the most sense. I actually like the fit offensively with Arthur Smith and the Steelers more. So if Fields went to Pittsburgh, the Steelers could still draft a first-round quarterback next year. Wouldn't stop them. They could draft a first-round quarterback this year, which is very unlikely, but it also gives them a shot to have a first-round caliber player at that position that could beat out potentially the incumbents in Pittsburgh. So that's why I like Justin Fields to Pittsburgh more. But with the Falcons, I don't know if he's a great fit for that Sean McVay, Shanahan tree offense that Zach Robinson is going to bring over as the offensive coordinator from LA for Justin Fields. So actually, I even though that's his, his hometown, that's where he came from, Georgia. And I like that storyline. I like Fields fit better in Pittsburgh.
I think I do too, just because of scheme. I mean, the weapons are probably about the same, give or take. I mean, they're both good, not great.
But in the same vein, where I was going with this is, what about Mac Jones in Atlanta? Because he is a better fit for that offense, I think.
Yeah. Like, would you want Mac Jones backing up Purdy?
Oh, I mean, that's the first thing I said when I saw the Zach Wilson news is
I bet.
Guaranteed at some point, Zach Wilson or Mac Jones is a backup quarterback for the 49ers. I feel like that's coming because
they replaced Darnold and pedigree, right. And yeah. And if it's true that Shanahan liked Jones back in the day, well, now I get him for 1/100th of the cost. Like that, I think that's a situation where an established quality quarterback that thrives from the pocket, Jones is your backup. Wilson to me is just, let's bring a young arm in like Dallas did with Lance, no matter what our quarterback situation is, and maybe my guys could coach him up better than your guys did.
And here's the last one with Mac Jones, more so even than Zach Wilson. What about Mac Jones in Minnesota? Because
that's
I think
fine.
You could get 80% of Kirk Cousins, especially with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, what, 35 now? Coming off an Achilles, right? And then you're going to pay him $40+ million a year, whatever it is he's going to end up getting. And Mac Jones would be a hell of a lot cheaper, and then you could still operate as you want, and potentially even go get another quarterback in the draft to compete with him. So, but you wouldn't. I think there's some opportunities for Jones out there, and if I was a team trading for a guy, I'd probably go get Jones just because he profiles as a good backup, even if he doesn't win your starting job.
Me too.
I'm not picking up the fifth-year option on any of those guys.
Except for Fields.
Except for Fields.
Yeah.
You immediately pick up the option after you trade for him.
You have to. I mean, because you'd be like $27 million over 2 years for Fields. You need those 2 years because he cost you something good. That's what I was about to say is two things out of this conversation. There's probably going to be 4 or 5 quarterbacks drafted in April in the first round. Several of them very, very high. Well, this year wasn't that different with Trevor Lawrence as the no-brainer, Wilson, Lance, Fields. I mean, they're all going to be on new teams in a month, maybe, except for Lawrence. Don't get too excited about this quarterback draft is the one thing I'm saying, the upcoming one.
Two of them are going to be bad. One's going to be good of the top 3 guys.
Exactly. Right.
And then maybe a surprise down the road as well.
Maybe Penix in the 3rd round or Rattler in the 3rd round turns into Jalen Hurts or whatever. You know what I mean? Like a decent pickup. But in terms of these guys that could move, Fields, I'm giving up a 2nd and maybe a little more. Wilson, I'm offering a 7. Maybe I'd go to a 6. Mac Jones, I might give you a 5.
I'm on board.
Yeah, I think that's about the cost.
I like it.
Yeah.
L'Jarius Sneed, since we last spoke, we talked about Sneed and how we thought we would do it if we were the Chiefs, and it sounds like the Chiefs are going to tag him. I don't know if that's been official, but he's going to get the franchise tag and maybe even get the trade post-tag. So the old tag and trade with L'Jarius Sneed, Matt.
I just don't know. I think he's a tremendous player, and I've been on record around here. If he hits the open market, the Steelers should jump in that pool and put him opposite Joey Porter Jr. He's tough. He follows number ones. He plays a slot. He blitzes. I really like the player. But there's no way. I mean, I've grown really sour on, having to give up a high pick for Khalil Mack, Jamal Adams, whatever, and then pay them on top. I mean, like, you have to be Lawrence Taylor for that to work. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty bad deal to give up the compensation the team that franchises these guys would want along with a long-term contract, especially for a corner who wasn't Jalen Ramsey or Sauce Gardner and wasn't a top 5 pick and doesn't have the pedigree. And that position can be pretty volatile year to year. Like, I'm not saying he's going to turn into a bust, but I don't know that he's going to be a top 5 corner for the length of his new contract. And it's a hard investment for me.
Does the tag and seek trade aspect of it bring him back? Because ultimately he doesn't get bigger money than he thought that the Chiefs were offering.
I mean, because if I'm going to make him one of the highest paid corners in the league on a 3-year deal, say, the best I can give you is maybe a third. I can't give you a first or a second and all that cap space. I mean, I just can't. I think that that's a bad allocation of resources on one guy that is good but has some questions and does just have a great track record.
You brought up Khalil Mack. We got a question about Mack and Bosa, question about Jaden Daniels, the top 3 quarterback prospect in this class, and more about prospect interviews as it pertains to the Combine and post-Combine. Next. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time or your money back. I love the Guaranteed Fit. I've used it at ebaymotors.com. You see the big green check, and you know that part is going to fit. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die on the road and alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. A question from Michael on Twitter. He says, would you rather trade for Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa? Who's worth more in theory to the Chargers? Follow-up question, is Jaden Daniels a top 3 quarterback because of Neighbors, or is Neighbors a top 3 wide receiver because of Daniels?
I'm going to start with the Chargers. So I just pulled this up on Spot Track, and I think I'm reading this correctly. Mack is a $38.5 million cap hit. Bosa's a $36.5 million cap hit, which is obscene, in its own right. Bosa would be a $22 million dead money guy, and Mack would be $15 million. Mack is making $17.5 this year. Bosa's making slightly less, $15. So you would inherit that base salary if you traded for them. So they're basically the same financially. Mack's the older of the two, but Joey's not a young spring chicken anymore. Mack had the better season. Yeah, I think clearly. Bosa, I think I trust less from a durability standpoint. So if I'm a contender, which I think are the only teams that would do this, the Chiefs, for example. I mean, not that they have the cap space, but I think I would take Mack as like a 1-year rental. Let's go win the Super Bowl. Like the Patriots Brady years. Give me one of these guys and try to win it. I think I'd take Mack, but I can't give you hardly anything for either one.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think there's huge value in either one, which is the reason why I think Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa is going to get just straight cut, because he's got a roster bonus that guarantees a bunch of money coming up in March. And I just don't think it's something that the Chargers are going to want to do. And I don't think a team's going to trade for him at those numbers you mentioned. So I think what happens is they end up keeping Mack, whether they restructure or do something else to try to make that more palatable, and they end up just eating the dead money and releasing Bosa. So I don't think either one of them gets traded. And I don't think there's a ton of trade value for either one. And Mack's more valuable currently, so he's the one they keep, I think. But he's probably the most likely to be traded as well.
So I just pulled up a free agent list of edge defenders that are ready to hit the market. And if you threw Bosa out there with Brian Burns, Daniil Hunter, Josh Allen, Zadarius Smith, Jonathan Greenard, Bryce Huff, and Chase Young, and there's Jadeveon Clowney, Leonard Floyd. I think he's closer to like Leonard Floyd and Jadeveon Clowney, even just on the open market, than certainly Josh Allen or Brian Burns. Like if he doesn't have a contract, he's just on the open market, pure free agent.
Definitely makes less than Burns and Josh Allen.
Yeah, not even close. Like I think he's more of a B- guy than he is a A- guy.
Is there a correlation? Are Jaden Daniels and Malik are they as good as Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were a few years ago coming into the draft? And
there's also Jefferson and Thomas. I mean, there's 2 first-round receivers and a first-round top 3 quarterback.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. And were they all just
first 3 batches hit?
Yeah, all 3 of the first ones hit. Do the next 3 all hit? And I certainly do think Jaden Daniels was helped because of his dynamic playmakers. But when you just isolate him, Malik Neighbors would have been dynamic and elite with anybody. I love him as a prospect.
Love it.
I wouldn't be shocked if teams believe that Malik Neighbors is just the best pure prospect, regardless of position in the draft. Even and we're hearing that from some reporters that maybe there's some teams out there that even like Neighbors more than Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think he's an elite prospect. The one little ding I've heard and I've noticed a little bit is against a big-time man-to-man corner in the NFL, will he consistently get open? He just hasn't been asked to do that a ton. He's been schemed up a little bit, but he certainly has a skill set, the work ethic to get there.
Because one of the knocks on him is like, oh, he's in the slot all the time. But that was the Justin Jefferson thing.
Right. No one thought he could play outside, or he would have went higher.
Get him open more often to feature him. It's not because he can't play on the outside.
So I had some quarterback conversations today with people I trust, and they both mentioned, boy, Jaden Daniels is much better at throwing in an anticipatory manner. And one of them even compared him to Purdy, to be honest with you, like throwing into voids that are about to open in zone coverage. That everyone just thinks of him as this raw passer with a nice arm that's really athletic, but they were both very impressed with him from the pocket, throwing with anticipation, on time, on rhythm. So yeah, they all benefit from each other, of course. LSU doesn't win the national title in the Burrow years probably without all 3, including Clyde Edwards-Helaire, et cetera, et cetera. But I think they all can stand alone on their own merits too, including Thomas, who's a phenomenal athlete as well, that I think in a week from now we might be talking about him to the Colts in the middle of the first round or something like that.
Daniels played a lot of football too. He disappeared. I forgot about him because he was big time at Arizona State. He was throwing to Brandon Ayuk when Ayuk was a first round draft prospect 5 years ago, wherever that was. And he was like, hey, the next big guy, skinny, but really athletic freshman. He burst on the scene. And after a couple of years at Arizona State, he's like, well, what happened to Jaden Daniels? And I didn't even realize he was at LSU, and he has this huge season this year, and he's always had that ability. So he was a big-time player, young in his college career, played a lot of football, end up transferring, and things didn't go the way they hoped at Arizona State. And then now you see what he's become, and the comparison to Purdy is apt because Purdy played a lot of snaps in college football as well. And it's just really helpful and played a lot more. He's played a lot more snaps than Drake May has. And I think it shows in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I would not say, like, looking back, and I actually thought this at the time, you and I weren't doing podcasts, but Johnny Manziel was really aided by Mike Evans. Evans was not aided by Manziel. Evans was great on his own, and it showed out that way in the NFL. I don't see that situation here, and I definitely don't with the Burrow era either.
Yep. Last one here. This one from Joey Bag of Donuts. And he says, how many times can a team talk to a player about being drafted? Is there a limit? Because there's the official 15-minute combine interviews. There's the 30 visits where a team can bring in 30 players to their own facility and interview them there. There's the pro day workouts where teams go to the campuses of these players and talk to them there. I don't know what the answer is, Matt, as far as
I don't know exactly either.
Official visits of that type. I would assume 3 is the maximum. You can't have a guy come back in again a second time on a 30 visit, as far as I know. But I do know you can talk to a player pretty much as you want. Like the head coach and like Ryan Poles could talk to Caleb Williams every single night on the phone before they go to bed if they want.
Yeah. Could they Zoom and text and be pen pals and whatever, send smoke signals or whatever they want? I don't think that's not like recruiting.
And especially the Zoom era is so much bigger, and that really was born out of COVID because all of the interviews were done that way. And I know with the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan talked to Trey Lance a ton over Zoom over that period. And I know the 49ers running backs coach, Bobby Turner, 70 years old. He's been around for a long time. He calls his running back prospects that the 49ers might draft 1 million times. And he just grills them about everything. And so all these late round and undrafted running backs of the 49ers and past Shanahan, I mean, he goes back to Mike Shanahan, that they mine. Those are all Bobby Turner guys because he grills them and he gets a really good feel for who these prospects are. So I think there's no limit on how many times you can talk to them. Official visits, the limit might be those 3 scenarios.
It might be. And, even on top of that, like you mentioned your team, the Steelers are famous for when they go to a pro day, they take people out to dinner. They take the players out to dinner. And for whatever reason, I don't know why every team doesn't, or these players pick the Steelers over others, whatever. But like, heard so many stories. They took Jack Campbell to dinner. They took, all these guys to dinner. And that's another way of evaluating, of course. So I don't know the answer to that. And along those lines, I just want to make the people aware, because if you don't know who Max Starks is, he was an offensive tackle in the league for a long time. He's one of the biggest human beings I've ever met. But we're on the air together, and, we do the same job here kind of for the Steelers. He did a really in-depth, almost like a 20-minute segment of what it was like with the medical stuff, how grueling that is. It was like an 8-hour process. And I just retweeted the YouTube video of it. Go check that out, because maybe we could even talk about it later in the week or next week, BP, because it was pretty cool to hear everything they had to endure while they're here medically before they even height, weight, let alone get on the field. It's worse than you think. I mean, it's an awful day.
We'll talk about that and more throughout the draft process leading up to April. The players hit the field for workouts Thursday, and we've got you covered every single day here. Peacock and Williamson back tomorrow. Talk to you then.